That's what I believe got him reelected, is the people knew that you could believe what he said.
Well, it never impresses
Our country is strong. How many people want it? We go forward to defend freedom. All that is good and just in our world. We have faith in our leaders. We're optimistic as to what becomes of it all. It really boils down to our ability to accept.
If you want a vision of the future, Winston, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
It is a frightening picture. The more information I discover, the worse I come to understand our situation really is. Whether you want to talk about the unparalleled concentration of power, whether you want to talk about the absolute genocide and murder that is being carried out across the world, or you want to talk about the trajectory of technology in itself and just how unprepared human society and Western society is to deal with that technology. So let's start by talking about this report. I'm sorry guys, it's really hard for me to go over this information and not get upset and have to talk about it over again. It's much more difficult than it seems. Before I get into the article, to most succinctly explain it to you, our culture and the world in totality is moving towards a neo-apocalyptic cyberpunk type future where science fiction is going to the reality of what we're dealing with is going to eclipse some of your most radical ideas and understanding of science fiction. We are living in amazing times. And one of the most powerful tools the elites and the powerful and the controllers and the masters of reality have over human society is the illusion of normalcy. Is the illusion of permanence. And if you walk outside today, if you walk down any city street or you interact with the general public, you will see that the majority in the Western world are completely locked into a 1985 or even I would argue a 1955 version of reality where nothing changes. People are doing the same thing today they were doing 50 years ago, 25 years ago. They're interacting, they're working in the same jobs. We read about all of these magnificent, exponential drives and leaps in technology, but other than the internet and your iPods, in fact, the majority of human society as it interacts in the Western developed first world countries is the exact same today that it was 50 years ago. But if you go and look at 50 years before that, then you start to see radical shifts and radical changes. And even though the technology and our movement towards all this is accelerating, the society is actually slowing down. The society in general is still completely wrapped in this reality bubble, unable to understand just how quickly their world is already changed around them. Look at genetically modified foods, look at the true impact of these technologies, and even though we're living the same way, and that's the complete break apart. That's the dichotomy in it. Is though we're living basically the same way, these technologies all around us are accelerating, and unless we can come to grips with that, unless we can come to understand the dangers of these technologies and understand just how we are being outflanked in that realm, in that understanding and the application of those technologies, then you start to understand just how much danger we're in. What am I talking about? The future of control and the capability for minorities of people to exercise power and dominion over the majority is just out of control. It is just exploding. Directed energy weapons, robotics, cybernetics, the ability to control populations with chemicals and radio waves. I mean, again, that goes to directed energy weapons. These are here now. All right? If you wanted to resist the government, okay, let's say that you share the opinions that I do. All right? The United States is one step away from falling into totalitarian dictatorship. And you're stocking up on food, you're stocking up on guns, and you're like, okay, if we have to do it, you know, I'm going to resist. How are you going to resist when some invisible robot that's 40 stories high with an energy field around it that makes it invisible and impenetrable to modern, you know, projectile weapons is shooting directed energy weapons out, you know, on a radius of like half a mile? The beam just hits over half a mile, and everybody just falls over in an epileptic seizure. So what are you going to do with your father's hunting rifle or your little M16 that you've bought when you're going to be confronted with something like that? And that's what I'm talking about. You know, the idea that we are an armed population, and the idea that the founders put into that the people should be armed and have the ability to resist government. How do you resist that kind of technology? When the disparity between what you have as an individual person to resist tyranny and what the powers that be have to bring against you if they decide to do so. So, and when I get up here and I talk about, oh, Bart, you know, that's science fiction, you're totally off base, it's a fantasy world that you're living in. Well, here's the reality, and I'll start reading this to you. The reports at the highest level of thinking, at the highest level of understanding, in our governments, military, intelligence, security, they themselves are predicting the cyberpunk, Orwellian, Brave New World, 1984 future. That's what they're planning for now. That's what their technology drive is being adapted for now. I mean, I read you on air about a month ago, the Ministry of Defense report that came out of Britain, where they literally detailed that the future is going to be this mass resistance as global corporations and global power entities continue to consolidate, as warfare and terrorism and class differentiation, as the middle class slowly shrinks. That's one of the things that it predicts, is that as the middle class shrinks and we get a larger disparity of wealth, where there's going to be these super elite minority that are going to own and control the majority of the infrastructure and the economy, while the rest of the plebes and the slaves are about 99% of the population. As the middle class slips into that population, they are going to resist in greater and greater degrees. I mean, that's what all of this infrastructure of control, that's what all of the tagging and the tracking and the RFID chips and the blimps in the sky and the hover drones and the directed energy weapons, that's what all of that is for. That is to manage the population. All right? And we can argue all day long about why it is happening. But that's one of the things that we have to grow up about and start getting through our heads as individuals and as members of movements. Because I see this as a commonality over and over again, how people have been diversified, how they've been compartmentalized and balkanized to where they're in their little groups, but their ability to stand up outside of those groups and attack issues together is almost completely gone or non-existent. We have to grow up and start realizing that we are moving